Trust is the easiest weapon to wield, and the deadliest to ignore. You didn't see it, did you? The ones closest to you, they never needed to stab you in the back. No, they smiled, they stayed, and they slowly drained the fire from your soul. Betrayal doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a familiar face. Sometimes it laughs at your jokes, likes your posts, asks how you're doing, and prays you never answer honestly. You trusted them. That was your first mistake. You called it loyalty. They called it leverage. You called it friendship. They called it convenience. You handed them the map to your heart, and they used it to find your softest spot. Understand this. Most enemies won't bother pretending, but the dangerous ones, they don't wear armor, they wear charm. They tell you you're amazing just after dimming your light. They say they support you right before they disappear when it counts. They pull you close only to keep you small. This isn't paranoia, it's prophecy. The first cut you ever felt wasn't from an enemy. It was from someone you once called home. They don't burn you with hatred. They freeze you with indifference. They don't push you off the edge. They convince you there's no need to climb at all. Look closely at your circle. Do you feel seen or just surrounded? Do they lift you or just like your silence? Would they celebrate your rise or mourn the moment they can't control you anymore? You think betrayal needs violence. But the real kind, it needs only time and a smile wide enough to disarm you. They said, "I'm here for you." But they never said how long or how much of you they'd tolerate before they began to retreat. You gave them truth. They gave you terms. Look, I am not telling you this to make you bitter. I'm telling you because you've been bleeding slow and calling it love. You've been breaking quietly and calling it friendship. You've been shrinking and calling it peace. No more you trusted them. But now it's time to trust yourself. Trust the voice that whispered when their applause felt hollow. Trust the fire that flickered when they asked you to dim. Trust the ache that never left after conversations that drained. Instead of built the illusion of loyalty is this. You believe you owe them something because they once made you laugh, because they remembered your birthday, because they said the right things once. But loyalty without alignment is not virtue. It's a leash, and you weren't made for leashes, so let me say it plainly. They won't always hit you to hurt you. They'll just stay close enough to stall you, and stalling is slower death. You were born for more, and they knew it. That's why they never pushed you. That's why they praised you for staying the same, because they feared what you might become if they weren't the loudest voice in your world. But their fear is not your burden. Their comfort is not your cage. Their limits are not your legacy. You trusted them now. Trust yourself enough to walk away. This is where the illusion ends. They clap when you win, just loud enough to drown out their resentment. Not too loud, not too long, just enough to make you doubt the chill crawling up your spine. You think they're proud of you. You think they're happy for you. But listen closer, and you'll hear the silence between their words, the hesitation behind their smiles, the envy buried beneath the praise. This isn't support, it's surveillance. They're not cheering you on, they're keeping you close, so they know how far not to let you rise. Let's speak plainly. There are 9 masks that betrayal wears, 9 poisons disguised as friendship, and the first is the subtle competitor. They never say it, but they hate losing to you. They want you to win. As long as they're a step ahead, your victories are fine, until they threaten their ego. Every time you climb, they climb higher not for the view, but to block the sun from reaching you. And then comes the backhanded supporter. You know them. They say, "That's amazing, but always a leash attached to the compliment." They'll nod as you speak your dreams, then laugh when you leave the room. They package doubt as advice and security as realism the next. The emotional leech. They drain you, bleed you, call you only when the world collapses on them, and expect you to build them back with your bare hands. When your skies darken, they vanish. They're allergic to your storms. They want your energy, not your truth, and yet you stay. Why? Because you're loyal, because you think giving endlessly is love, but love without return isn't devotion. It's decay. Then there's the dream doubter. You say, "I want to build." They say, "Is that realistic?" You say, I want more. They say, but is that really you? No malice, no venom, just the soft, sweet voice of mediocrity, whispering in your ear every time you dare to outgrow the cage they built for you. They don't mean harm. That's what makes it worse. They're just worried, concerned, afraid, and they want you to be too. Then enters the flaky promise maker. They make vows with no spine. They're there for the photo, gone for the war, they say. I got you, but when the bullets fly, they're already miles away. These are the friends who say, let me know if you need anything, but never pick up when you don't. Then the past addict, they only want the old version of you, the broken you, the tame you. They drag every conversation back to what was, because what is threatens them. They can't follow who you're becoming, so they chain you to who you were. They speak nostalgia like gospel, but it's a prayer to the god of stagnation. Then comes the guilt tripper. Their love comes with receipts. They do nothing freely. Everything has weight, obligation, emotional debt. Miss one call. You're selfish. Say no once. You're cold. You're not allowed to need space. Not allowed to have boundaries, because with them, love is control and guilt is currency. The secret critic is next. They smile to your face, but behind closed doors, your name is currency, your flaws entertainment. You only find out later, always later, when someone says, I heard, and your stomach drops. It was them. It was always them. The one you trusted, the one who smiled the widest, and then the applause addict. You're only around when you're winning. When the spotlight hits, they're front row. When it fades, so do they. They don't love you. They love your glow, your stage, your relevance. They're gone when it's hard. Gone when it's quiet. Gone when you're no longer useful. Look at your life. Tell me honestly, how many of these have you met? How many do you still call friend? If the answer stings good, that's the poison working its way out. Because they're not friends, they're anchors dressed as life vests. You think they're keeping you safe, but they're the reason you haven't reached the surface. You re-exhausted, not because of your path, but because of who you're carrying. You walk into rooms and shrink so they don't feel small. You hide your win so they don't feel insecure. You mute your voice so they don't hear the sound of their own mediocrity. And here's the truth no one dares to say. The people who cost you the most are often the ones you defend the hardest. The pain is quiet, the damage invisible, but you feel it. In your hesitation, in your overthinking, in your constant need to explain, justify, minimize. These aren't just toxic friendships. They are slow death, smiling assassins, ropes disguised as ribbons, and the longer you keep them, the more they unravel you. This is the poison beneath the praise, the corrosion beneath the comfort. Now you see it, now you feel it, and awareness is the first act of rebellion. They don't wear masks, they wear your trust. They sit beside you, not in shadows and light, in laughter and routine. They aren't the ones who strike you down with rage. They dismantle you with care, a well-timed silence, a subtle sigh, a look that says, you're too much, tone it down. Let's talk about the enemies who sit closest to you. The ones who shape your fate, not with blades but with boundaries. They say they love you, and maybe they do, but love without growth is possession. And these next 9, they don't want you free, they want you familiar. The always right friend is the first. Every conversation is a court case. Your truth is cross-examined, your opinion dismissed. You're not heard, you managed to disagree once, and you're the villain. Disagree twice, and they rewrite your loyalty. They don't want a friend, they want a reflection. Then there's the conditional loyalist. They'll support you as long as you stay inside their lines. Make a choice they wouldn't. Watch their love evaporate. They love the version of you that makes them comfortable, not the one that makes them grow. Next comes the identity keeper. They don't want you to evolve. They miss the the broken you, the predictable you. Change makes them nervous. Growth makes them resentful. They mock your ambition as a phase. They frame your transformation as betrayal, because to them, your transformation is a reminder that they stayed the same. And the jealous underminer? Oh, they're clever. Asterisk. They won't say it outright. No. They're more refined. They laugh when you share a win, then point out a flaw. They call it just joking. But every joke cuts closer to the truth. Your success becomes their threat. They don't sharpen blades. They sharpen words. Then there's the passive-aggressive phantom. You're always guessing with them, reading between sighs, apologizing for crimes you didn't commit. You ask what's wrong. They say nothing. But their silence screams. They don't confront, they corrode. The scarcity partner is next. They treat life like a zero-sum game. If you rise, they fall. They can't celebrate your wins, because in their eyes, your progress is their loss. Their mindset is starvation, and they're starving for what you've built. Then comes the fear feeder. They wrap chains in concern. They call your vision too risky. They bury your dreams in what ifs. They don't push you to be cautious. They push you to be afraid. Their fear becomes your fear. Their hesitation becomes your prison. And the secret rival? They copy your moves, mirror your milestones, but behind the mimicry is war you never signed up to race. But they run beside you anyway, only to outpace you, outshine you. They call it inspiration, but it's invasion. And finally, subtle manipulator. They give, but not freely. Every favor is a favor owed. Every gesture has strings. You didn't ask for help, but now you're indebted. Friendship? No, it's a contract, unspoken, unfair, unforgiving. You don't realize it until you try to say no. These people, they don't destroy you with hatred. They erode you with love. Conditional, controlling, calculated, and you let it happen. Why? Because they've been there for years, because the memories are good, because loyalty became your leash. But loyalty is not a reason to stay where you're dying. Nietzsche said, whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become one. But what if the monsters aren't out there? What if they're beside you, feeding you doubt, calling it care, fueling your stagnation, calling it protection? You fight battles outside while you're bleeding from within. This is why most never rise. Not because they aren't strong enough, but because their circle is made of chains. You're not weak. You're distracted. You're not broken. You're surrounded. It's easy to spot an enemy who spits in your face, but the one who whispers in your ear? That's the real danger. So maybe now you're realizing your circle is smaller than you thought. Maybe you're finally seeing it, that being surrounded doesn't mean being supported. That being known doesn't mean being seen. You don't need more people. You need more clarity. Clarity about who celebrates you and who competes with you, who builds with you and who balances on your back. Clarity is power, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. These aren't just bad habits. These are silent assassins, and every time you ignore them, you surrender your potential. You can't grow in poisoned soil. You can't rise in chains. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your sabotage. You owe yourself your evolution. And if that means walking alone for a while, so be it. The ones who deserve your presence won't fear your power. They'll welcome it. They'll rise with it. But until then, let the leeches fall. Let the masks crack. Let the anchors sink, because you're not here to be liked. You're here to become. They smile in public and sink daggers in private. You want to believe you're safe, that what's close is pure, that what's familiar is loyal. But there are those who hide not behind masks, but behind routine. They never miss your birthday. They show up when the crowd is watching. They leave right when the lights go out. These aren't friends. They are spectators, addicts of the stage, ghosts of support. Let me show you who they are. The energy sponge. You know them well. They never seem angry, never seem wrong, but you leave every conversation feeling drained, like they sucked the marrow from your bones. Their sadness becomes your homework, their anger your burden, their chaos your cost. You didn't agree to be their therapist, but somehow you became one, and every time you try to share your storm, they change the subject because they don't want to listen. They want to unload. Then there's the gossip dealer, the collector of secrets, the trader of pain. They tell you things about others to make you feel close. You think, if they trust me with this, I must be special. But listen closely, because if they speak about others like that, they speak about you too. They turn friendships into currency, and your name is a coin in their pocket next. The never there. This one hurts more than it should because they're not cruel, they're not loud, they're just gone. They cancel, they postpone. They vanish but only when it matters. They're present when the sun's out, but gone when it rains you. Give them chance after chance, and still, when the storm hits, you stand alone, and still you call them friend. Why? Because you're too loyal to walk away from absence. Then comes the self-help hijacker. You try to open up, to be raw, to share the battle in your chest, but before you can finish, they interrupt. Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Then they take your wound and turn it into their monologue. Their trauma becomes louder, their pain more important. You disappear in their shadow. They don't listen. They compare. You didn't need a competition. You needed compassion. And finally, the low-key hater. This one is insidious. They like your posts. They smile at your wins. But when things get quiet, they disappear. When you rise too high, they pull away. They can't stand to see you become more than what they're used to. They support the version of you that fails just enough, that shines just dimly enough to keep their ego safe. You feel it, that tension, that distance, but you silence it. You tell yourself, maybe they're busy, but deep down, you know some people only love you when you lose these five. They don't scream, they don't fight, they vanish, they whisper, they smile, and that's what makes them so dangerous. You keep them around, not because you love who they are, but because you miss who they were. But nostalgia isn't loyalty, and memory isn't a reason to stay, because here's the truth. You can't evolve in a room that only claps for your past. They say, real friends stick around, but some only stick because you haven't noticed the rot. The danger isn't in the obvious, it's in the subtle, and these subtle ones, they're poison in small doses, sweet enough to swallow, deadly enough to kill your ambitions. Oh, ask yourself, why are you still carrying ghosts? You think being alone is the worst outcome, but what if being surrounded by silent enemies is worse? Nietzsche once said, become who you are. But how can you, if you're weighed down by people who refuse to see your transformation? How can you, if every win is met with distance, every dream with silence? You must become unrecognizable, not to the world, but to those who only loved your brokenness. There is no room for apology in evolution. Let them say, you've changed. Let them whisper. Let them walk. You weren't made to remain. Growth is betrayal. To those who never planned to grow with you, let them stay where they are. You were made to burn the bridge and walk through fire, because it's better to stand alone in truth than together in chains. These five are not your allies. They are mirrors cracked by their own fear, reflecting back a version of you that no longer exists. Shatter them. Shatter the silence. Shatter the guilt. Shatter the illusion. And when you do, see who was never real to begin with. They don't just hurt your progress, they haunt your soul. You've seen the whispers. You've felt the silence. You've endured the chains disguised as companionship. But now we unveil the darkest masks, the last three. The final ones, not because they're rare, but because they are hardest to name. Because these three don't just limit your growth, they poison your core. The puppet master, their hands are soft. Their words sound like care, but every sentence is a string. They don't scream, they advise, they don't control. They guide, and before you know it, you no longer trust your voice. Your decisions feel foreign. Your instincts muty. You dress the way they prefer, think how they think, move only when they nod. You tell yourself they mean well, but good intentions don't excuse silent control, because the truth is, their love has a leash, and the second you step beyond their reach, they pull. If you feel smaller every time you speak to them, you are not loved, you are managed. Cut the string. Then there's the resentful shadow. They stand beside you in every photo. They clap when you win. They say, I'm proud of you, but their eyes say otherwise. There's a tension, a bitterness, a flicker of envy they never confess, but you always feel. You start apologizing for your success, downplaying your growth, shrinking to make them comfortable. They never say, I wish you'd fail, but you hear it in the silence. This is the shadow that walks with you, but never cheers for you. They don't need to sabotage you, they just need you to doubt yourself, because if you fly too high, their own reflection becomes unbearable. You don't need that kind of loyalty. And finally, the imitator at first. They flatter you, they copy your clothes, your words, your goals. You think they're inspired, but then it creeps in. They mirror your dreams. They echo your voice. They take your originality and wear it like their own skin. You feel erased, invaded suddenly. You're not sure what was yours anymore. They don't want to walk beside you. They want to become you, and slowly, subtly, you stop sharing ideas, stop showing up fully. You begin to censor your shine, just to keep your identity safe. This is not friendship. This is consumption. Nietzsche called them spirit leeches. They don't want to kill you. They want to live inside you, and the longer you let them stay, the more you become a ghost in your own life. These three, they are not friends. They are masks, made of memories, leashes made of guilt, shadows dressed as shelter. But if you dare, if you cut the cord, something happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. You begin to trust it. You begin to live for your own fire. They will say you've become cold. They will call it betrayal, but they are wrong. It is rebirth, and rebirth is always loud to those who only knew your silence. So here's your truth. If you feel drained, diminished, or erased, look around. These three may be closer than you think, but the cure isn't confrontation. It's clarity. You don't need to fight. You need to walk away, because not everyone deserves a seat at the table of your transformation. This is the end of illusions, the end of polite poison, and the beginning of ruthless truth. You are not here to manage anyone's comfort. You are here to burn, to rise, to become. Let them fall away, and if you must walk alone, then walk like fire. They held you in comfort. You mistook it for love. So what now? You've seen their faces, heard their whispers in your silence, felt their grip in your hesitation. You've stood among them, smiling, while something inside you cracked quietly like a tree in a windstorm. You thought loyalty meant staying. You thought time equaled trust. You thought history guaranteed future. But here you are, tethered by invisible strings to people who clip your wings in the name of love. And now you want out. Good. But freedom isn't soft. Freedom isn't polite. Freedom is brutal, because the first chain you must break is denial. Step I. Radical honesty. Look in the mirror and stop lying to yourself. Who makes you feel smaller after every conversation? Who can't clap when you win? Who always needs you when you need yourself most? Don't excuse them. Don't soften it. Don't wrap it in. They mean well. Some prisons come with smiles. Name them. Then, step 2. Boundaries. Not war, not drama, not burning bridges. Silence, distance, power. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to convince them of your worth. You don't need a final conversation. Let your absence scream what your words no longer can. Let them wonder why the fire they tried to contain no longer warms them. Step 3. Seek mirrors, not shadows. Find the rare few who reflect your potential. Not your past, not your pain, your possibility. They don't have to be many. One real mirror is worth more than 100 dim lights. These are the ones who don't flinch at your ambition. They fan it. They don't fear your evolution. They celebrate it, because their growth doesn't shrink in your shine. Step IV. Get comfortable alone. This is the hardest one, but listen. Solitude is not a curse. It's sanctuary. It's the place where your voice gets louder than the world's opinions, where your vision sharpens, where your bones remember they were built for storms, not cages. Nietzsche walked alone for years, not because he was broken, because he refused to be bent. Learn to love your own company, because when the wrong people leave, the right silence enters, and in that silence, you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Step V. Rebuild with intention as you rise. The right ones will find you, not the imitators, not the shadows, not the puppeteers, but those drawn to your roar, to your chaos, to your calm. People who don't need you to shrink, to feel seen. People who walk beside you, not in your light, but in their own shoes. Them wisely. Choose them slowly, and never again confuse history with alignment. You are not required to bleed for those who cut you with Kindness, let that sink in. This is how you reclaim yourself, not with rage, not with vengeance, but with clarity. With distance, with fire. They wanted you to stay tame, stay small, stay safe, but now you remember. You were never made to kneel in the garden of false friends. You were made to burn, and now you do. They tried to bury you, but they didn't know. You were seed. You've seen the illusion now clearer than ever. Every handshake laced with doubt, every embrace lined with fear, every laugh that covered envy. They weren't your friends. They were your restraints, silken ropes wrapped around your soul, disguised as safety, but now you're untied, unforgiven, unleashed. This is the part they never wanted you to reach. The version of you that doesn't ask for permission. The version of you that stops explaining and starts executing. Let me say it straight. You don't owe anyone your silence anymore. Not the friends who mocked your growth. Not the ones who feared your change. Not even the ones who smiled just to stay close enough to dim you. Let them talk. Let them call you distant, cold, arrogant. Let them say you switched up, because you did. You burned the version of yourself that made them comfortable, to become the one that makes them nervous. And that is power, the real kind. The kind no applause can grant. The kind no betrayal can steal. The kind that rises from ashes. Not approval. Look at you now, scarred. Yes, but unshaken, alone. Maybe, but whole. This isn't the end of your story. It's the awakening from this point forward. You walk without the leash of familiarity. You run without waiting for someone to catch up. You build without begging others to believe. You don't need their hands to climb anymore. Have grown wings, and the air is different up here. Quieter, sharper, honest. This is where you become untouchable, not because you're above pain, but because you finally understand it. Pain was your forge. Loneliness was your teacher. And betrayal was the doorway. They tried to keep you small. They built rooms with no exits. They whispered limits in your ear and called it love, but you learned to knock down walls with your silence. You learned to draw strength from absence. And now you are the storm they prayed would pass, but you don't pass. You stay, you destroy, you rebuild, you become. Let them fear the version of you that doesn't wait anymore. Let them flinch when your name is spoken. Let them wonder where they lost you, because here's the truth. You were never theirs to keep. You were always meant to break free, to become who you are. And now you are unapologetic, unshackled, unstoppable. They can keep their circles of mediocrity. You've stepped into your spiral of ascension, and from this height, you don't look down. You look forward, and you smile, because finally you are not who they made. You are who you chose to be, and no one can unmake you now. Not all farewells are sad. Some are survival. You've heard the truth, now felt it burn through the fog they wrapped you in. You've faced the mirror, the one they tried to shatter. And you didn't look away. I've seen them, not as the friends they claimed to be, but as the weight you were never meant to carry. And now comes the part most fear. Not the confrontation, not the isolation, but the goodbye, because saying goodbye isn't weakness, it's warfare. It's the moment you reclaim your name from every mouth that misused it. It's when you decide silence is louder than explanation. They won't understand. They'll call you cold, dramatic, unfair. Let them, because this isn't about them anymore. This is about you. You choosing peace over people pleasing. You choosing growth over guilt. You choosing the future over the familiar. Understand this. You don't cut ties because you hate them. Cut ties because you finally love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who keep handing you knives. They were never going to say sorry. They were never going to cheer louder. They were never going to grow. But you were always meant to rise. And sometimes rising means walking away, even when your hands still remember holding on. Let go anyway. Because freedom isn't in being liked, it's in being true. It's in waking up and knowing your circle matches your soul, not your wounds. So thank them, not with words, with distance. Thank them for showing you who they were. Thank them for underestimating you. Thank them for leaving when you needed them most. Because now you've learned the difference between company and connection, between loud loyalty and quiet sabotage, between who you needed then and who you must be now. You They outgrown the khaki, you've shed the skin, you've said goodbye, not to friends, to fragments of yourself that forgot your worth. And what comes next? That's yours, unwritten, unchained, unstoppable, so go become who you were always meant to be, and never apologize for walking alone when that's the only way to reach the place where you finally belong, alone. Maybe, but never again in chains. Hit like if this made you stop scrolling. Subscribe if you're ready for more content that doesn't need clickbait to keep you here.